Alrighty, we're going to talk about revolvers today. Got a couple automatics here, sitting out here so we can see these. I'll do one on a revolver, and then I'll do a second one on an automatic or semi-automatic. Now, all these are pistols. This is a pistol. This is a pistol. This is a pistol. And this is a pistol. These two are considered semi-automatics or automatics. You'll hear them called autos or semi. They're not an automatic gun per se where they shoot a bunch of bullets, but they're called semi-automatic. You notice they don't have the cylinder. If you look at this gun, it has a cylinder right here that spins. And this is where you put the bullets. And that cylinder closes. Okay, whereas on the automatic, you have a slide that goes back and forth, and that's what puts the round in the chamber. So let's talk about revolvers here. I'll set these autos to the side here. Here's two different types of revolvers. Again, you need to know the look. This revolver here does not have a trigger or a hammer on the outside. So the parts of a gun usually, I guess I can cover that. This is your handle where you hold it. Pistol grip, back strap, front strap. You can look up the technical terms. I'm not going to get all into technical. You want to understand how a gun operates. So you obviously hold the gun with the pistol grip of the revolver. Keep the finger off the trigger. Remember we talked about that in the other video. Don't ever put your finger on the trigger unless you're ready to shoot. The part that holds this part right here is called the barrel, and then the part that holds the barrel and the grip and the hammer and all the other stuff is kind of called the frame. So this would be your frame. So this cylinder, if I were to take this little spinning thing off, the spinning cylinder, I would still have a frame here. So the frame holds the barrel and it holds the trigger mechanisms. This is your this is part of your trigger mechanism. It's actually called a hammer, but it comes back and this is what strikes the bullet. And we'll go over how the bullet works and everything. And I don't want to get too caught up in the technical stuff, but if you own a gun, you need to understand how this thing works and what happens with it when you pull the trigger. Again, we cleared the gun already. We're pointing in a safe direction. There's no bullets in here. When you squeeze the trigger on this gun, you're going to notice this hammer moves backwards and then it falls forward as I keep pulling. Okay, that's called a double action because the action works by just me pulling the trigger. If I cock this, now when I pull the trigger, all I do is release this. That's called single action. So you have double action where you can shoot multiple times by just pulling the trigger and it makes the hammer come back. When this hammer comes back and this trigger moves, you notice this cylinder is spinning. I don't know if you can see that or not. This cylinder spins and it loads a new bullet each time I pull the trigger. So as I pull the trigger, it's firing the bullet here first and it pulls it in and then the hammer strikes. Then it rolls the next bullet in and the hammer strikes there and it rolls. So I have six chambers, therefore it's a 6-shot. This is called a Smith & Wesson 686, 357. We'll get into the names and all that, but I just want to get you to understand what a revolver is. And a revolver has a cylinder. Now it can have an exposed hammer, which I call this hammer here is exposed to where I can go single action if I want to, and then squeeze the trigger. This one has what's called an internal hammer. And an internal hammer makes it to where there's less moving parts. I still have a cylinder. I only have 5 bullets in this one. But when I shut this and I squeeze the trigger, same thing happens. It just happens internally. So when you're doing this internally, cylinder's still spinning, it's still rolling the next bullet into the area to shoot, but the hammer is internal. Now why would you need an internal hammer? Well, these guns are small and light, so you don't have a hammer to get caught up or hung on something. If you want to keep this gun small in your ankle, you want to carry it in your pocketbook, your purse, in your back pocket. these are really good. It takes a little bit more pressure to pull this trigger, so there's no safeties on revolvers. So this gun right here, the safety, you know, if you watch the old Black Ops movie, this is my safety. Because if you don't pull the trigger, the gun's safe. So these guns, a revolver doesn't have safety. When I pull the trigger, it fires around. It's got an internal hammer. So what that creates is I can shoot this gun inside a jacket. I can shoot it inside my thing, and I don't have to worry about any moving parts. The only thing that moves is this cylinder moving around. So this makes it a very reliable and safe gun if you're using if you're using it in the winter. You can carry it in a thick coat. You can have your hand on it. Somebody comes up to rob you. You can shoot right through your coat. You're not worried about the hammer. If you shoot this one through your coat, when you pull the trigger, if you've got a jacket, your jacket come in between there and maybe stop that trigger or hammer from hitting the bullet. And your gun would get a misfire or not fire, and then you'd be kind of in a jam because you would expect a boom and you don't get it. So a revolver, most revolvers have a mechanism right here which you push forward, and that's what lets the cylinder come out. So when I push up here, it allows this cylinder to pop out. You do that with your thumb. So when you're holding the gun, you would just push that up and your cylinder will pop out. Most people, when they're opening a revolver, they use these two fingers in the middle here, and you put that on the cylinder. So I push this forward with my thumb, I push out with this, and that way I can control it. What you don't want to do with revolvers, you don't want to have this slam up and down. This will bend a critical part. The yoke here that holds this will bend and jam. So you see people having a gun like this, and then you see them close it like this. That's not good. Looks cool, but it's not good for the gun because you're slamming this yoke. When you open your pistol, you need to have a controlled opening and a controlled closing. And when you close it, sometimes you have to spin it a little bit to make sure that thing locks. See, this is loose, not locked in, so I'm going to lock it on a round. That way the cylinder's locked, but I have control because I'm controlling it with the two bottom fingers and the top thumb, and then when I push here, I can carry the gun safely. If I carry the gun like this extraction rod here, plunger they call it, probably call it a few other names, it forces the bullets out that holds the bullets. So when I press that, it knocks all the old brass out so I can put new bullets in. Okay? Basic on a revolver. If you have a revolver, you're going to have to, you know, get more into it and realize how to shoot it and pull it. But remember, a double action trigger pull is a little bit harder and it's a little bit longer. We're going to get into trigger pull and shooting later. But the longer I'm pulling this trigger, there's room for error. So if I'm not really good, I could be shaking, I could pause, I could do all this while I'm pulling this trigger. Whereas if the trigger is locked to the rear, I barely have to move the trigger at all for that hammer to fall. So there's a lot less movement. But there's a lot greater chance for an accidental discharge. If I'm carrying a gun around like this, somebody bumps me, oops, sorry, oh, I didn't mean to hit you in the head with that bullet. You don't want to be doing that. So the pros and the cons to single action and double action we'll get into later. I just want you to kind of understand revolvers all have a cylinder. Most revolvers are 6 shots. Your smaller frame revolvers are 5 shots. And some of your 22 revolvers are 9 shots. Maybe when you get into some bigger ones, if you want a small like 44 mag, and we'll get into all the different bullet types later, then that would change, because then if it's got really big bullets, maybe it is only a 5-cylinder. So hopefully that will explain a revolver. My next one will be on automatics. And we'll end that there. And hope that helps. Buddy and Mr. T, you're good boys. If you didn't go to my other channel, you don't know what that means.